Welcome to Stoned Stories with me, Paige. How are you? Whether you need an escape or just a moment to unwind, you're in the right place. Everyone loves a story, and everyone needs a break. So sit back and let me take you on a gemological journey. And while we're at it, let's get stoned. What if I told you that one of humans' oldest obsessions isn't simply finding treasure, it's stealing it? That for as long as gemstones have existed, as symbols of wealth, power, and beauty, someone has been trying to take them. And because gems are unlike any other form of wealth, you can't fold a castle into your pocket, you can't smuggle a fleet of ships across a border. But a diamond, a ruby, an emerald, a fortune worth millions can sit in the palm of your hand. And that simple fact has fascinated thieves for thousands of years. From ancient tomb robbers prying jewels from the dead, to highwaymen ambushing royal caravans, to modern criminals armed with surveillance cameras, luxury cars, and military-grade planning. The story of gemstones is also the story of those who tried to steal them. And strangely, we can't seem to look away. Because when a gemstone is stolen, something unusual happens. The stone often becomes more famous than it was before. A diamond resting quietly in a museum case is beautiful. A diamond stolen from a museum case becomes legendary. The theft becomes part of the gem's identity, its history, its mythology, its story. And humans have always loved stories, especially stories about impossible crimes. So today, that's exactly what we're going to do. Talk about impossible crimes. Especially those done by the Pink Panthers, the gem heist organization group still stumping law enforcement today. We celebrate jewel thieves in films. We turn them into folk heroes. We write novels about them, build television series around them. We watch documentaries detailing every step of a robbery and wonder not only how the thieves were caught, but whether they deserved to be caught at all. It's a strange contradiction. Most crimes inspire fear, gem heists inspire fascination. And perhaps because they occupy a strange space between criminality and craftsmanship. The greatest jewel thefts are often less about violence and more about ingenuity. Carefully studied security cameras, months of surveillance, blueprints, disguises, timing, psychology. The execution of a plan that appears impossible until it succeeds. And then there's the prize itself, because gemstones possess a quality that makes them uniquely vulnerable to theft. Unlike paintings, unlike sculptures, unlike famous buildings, a gemstone can disappear. Not metaphorically, literally. A diamond can be recut. An emerald can be removed from its setting. A ruby can pass through half a dozen hands before authorities even realize it's missing. One moment, it's a famous treasure, and the next, it's simply another stone. Its identity erased forever. This has created centuries-long cat-and-mouse game between collectors, governments, jewelers, museums, and thieves. And some of the world's most famous gemstones have found themselves caught in the middle. The history of gem theft stretches back farther than most people realize. Ancient Egyptian tombs were frequently looted for jewelry and precious stones. Roman writers complained about thieves targeting gems prized by the wealthy elite. Across medieval Europe, church treasuries became targets because they contained some of the most valuable collections of gemstones in existence. Kings locked jewels inside castles. Pirates hunted treasure ships, carrying emeralds from the New World. Bandits stalked trade routes that connected Asia, the Middle East, and Europe. Where gems traveled, thieves followed. And as gemstones became more valuable, the heist became more ambitious. By the 19th and 20th centuries, jewel theft had transformed into something theatrical. Newspapers breathlessly covered daring robberies. Master thieves became celebrities. Entire cities became captivated by stories of stolen diamonds and vanished treasure. Some criminals embraced the attention. Others vanished into history. But all contributed to a growing mythology surrounding gem heists. A mythology that continues today. Because despite lasers, despite biometric scanners, despite armored display cases and surveillance networks that span continents, gem theft never disappeared. In some ways, it evolved. The targets became larger, the security became stronger, and the thieves became smarter. Entire criminal organizations emerged whose sole purpose was stealing precious stones. Groups capable of studying a target for months. Groups capable of crossing international borders within hours. Disappearing into the shadows before investigators even understood what happened. And perhaps no group embodied this modern era of gemstone theft more completely than the Pink Panthers, an organization so elusive that law enforcement compared them to ghosts, a criminal network that stole hundreds of millions of dollars worth of jewels, a group whose robberies often looked less like crimes and more like scenes from a Hollywood movie. But before we get into them, before the luxury boutiques, the smash-and-grab raids, the disguises and escape plans, and the diamonds worth fortunes, we need to understand why gemstone theft holds such a powerful grip on our imagination. Because beneath every famous heist lies the same temptation that has existed for thousands of years. A tiny piece of crystal, a stone born deep within the earth, something beautiful, rare, valuable enough to kill for, or perhaps valuable enough to steal. And now, let's turn our fascination beyond gem heists, because what if I told you that one of the most successful groups of gem thieves in history may not have had a leader, no headquarters, no official membership list, no known chain of command, and yet for years the Pink Panthers robbed some of the most heavily protected jewelry stores on Earth, stealing hundreds of millions of dollars worth of diamonds, vanishing across international borders, and leaving law enforcement wondering whether they were chasing a criminal organization or a myth. This is the story of the notorious Pink Panthers, a group of jewel thieves whose crimes often seem less like robberies and more like scenes pulled directly from your favorite Hollywood heist films. Since the early 2000s, police agencies around the world have struggled to understand exactly who the Pink Panthers are. Investigators believe they're not a traditional crime organization at all. They know that there's no known leader, no rigid hierarchy. Instead, authorities suspect the Panthers are a loose network of highly skilled criminals, many originating from the Balkans, who come together for specific operations before disappearing once again. What unites them is not ideology, not territory, not even loyalty. It's precision, speed, and a near obsessive attention to detail. The world first began paying attention in 2003. The target was Graff Diamonds, one of London's most prestigious jewelry houses, a store renowned for creating some of the finest jewelry in the world. And to most people, it looks impossible to rob. So the Panthers, it looked like a challenge. 6 thieves entered the store and executed a meticulously planned robbery in less than 30 minutes. They'd studied the location beforehand, prepared disguises, planned escape routes. Every detail had been rehearsed. Inside the store, the thieves forced a sales assistant named Petra Evnar to help them gain access to the display cases. One by one, she filled bags with necklaces, earrings, watches, and diamonds. 43 pieces in total, more than $100 million worth of jewelry. One necklace alone accounted for nearly half of the entire haul. Petra later recalled being threatened with death if she failed to cooperate. Then almost as quickly as they appeared, the thieves were gone. The robbery was a masterpiece of planning. But unlike many Pink Panther operations that would follow, this one ended in violence. The alleged mastermind, Aman Kassé, relied on disguises, professional makeup artists, and a carefully orchestrated network of getaway vehicles to escape London. But as police closed in, he opened fire, turning a meticulously planned jewel theft into a citywide manhunt. And then he vanished for years. Authorities eventually caught up to him in 2009, 6 years after the robbery. By then, much of the stolen jewelry had already disappeared. Of the more than $100 million taken from Graff Diamonds, millions of dollars worth of stones were never recovered. Investigators believe many were removed from their settings, recut, and quietly absorbed into the global diamond black market, their identities erased forever. But the Graff robbery accomplished something else. It gave the world a new criminal legend, the Pink Panthers. a nickname inspired by both their elegance and their audacity. Partly because of their glamorous targets, and partly because of another famous theft involving a pink diamond hidden inside a jar of face cream, a trick that mirrored a scene from the 1975 film The Return of the Pink Panther. The name stuck, and so did the legend. But the question remained, who exactly were these people, and where did they come from? To understand the Pink Panthers, you have to start in the chaos of the 1990s, a decade where the former Yugoslavia was breaking apart. Wars redrew borders, governments struggled to maintain control, and corruption seeped into nearly every corner of public life. It was in this environment that the Pink Panthers are believed to have emerged, not from a single city, not from a single crime family, but from a generation shaped by instability, conflict, and opportunity. According to many accounts, the group was founded by a Serbian national named Dragan Mikic, though, like much of the Panthers' history, the details remain clouded by rumor and legend. What investigators do agree on is that the organization's core was drawn from across the former Yugoslav republics, Serbia, Bosnia, Croatia, Macedonia, and Montenegro. Many members were not amateurs, they were experienced criminals, professional operators, people who had spent years navigating a world where survival rewarded ingenuity. Exactly how large the Pink Panthers became is still a matter of debate. Some estimate suggests a tight-knit group of only a few dozen members. Others claim a sprawling network hundreds strong. Interpol estimates the fall somewhere is in between. Roughly 60 core members supported by hundreds of associates and collaborators around the world, which feels fitting for a group built on secrecy. Even today, nobody seems entirely sure where the Pink Panthers begin and where they end. And that secrecy extended to the way they operated. Pulling off a Pink Panther heist wasn't as simple as answering a phone call. Joining an operation could take years. Those invited onto a job often knew almost nothing about the people standing beside them. There were no ranks. There's no introductions, no obvious chain of command. The person helping smash a display case might be on their first job, or they might be one of the most influential members in the entire organization. You simply wouldn't know. And that was the point. The Panthers operated less like a criminal syndicate and more like a collection of shadows. Compartmentalized, decentralized, deliberately opaque. Even their surveillance methods broke the mold. Before a target was ever hit, attractive women dressed in luxury fashion and expensive jewelry would visit stores posing as wealthy customers. But they weren't shopping, they were studying. Learning security routines, mapping escape routes, identifying blind spots. By the time the robbery occurred, the Panthers often knew the store better than the employees. Then came the part that made them famous, the heist itself. Unlike many criminal groups, the Panthers generally avoided deadly force. Their greatest weapon wasn't murder, it was shock. A sudden burst of noise, a display case exploding in fragments. A few seconds of complete chaos. Just enough confusion to overwhelm everyone in the room before anyone could react. And then, they were gone. Sometimes in luxury sedans, sometimes on motorcycles, sometimes on speedboats. The escape was often as memorable as the robbery itself. In Biarritz, members of the group reportedly painted a bench across from a jewelry store shortly before robbing it. The goal? To discourage witnesses from sitting nearby by making the paint appear fresh. In St. Tropez, they allegedly wore matching flower-patterned shirts before making their escape by boat. And in Paris, 4 members disguised themselves as women before carrying out a robbery at the famous Harry Winston jewelry store. As years passed, investigators began suspecting the Panthers had moved beyond costumes altogether. Some members were believed to use prosthetics and professional makeup to alter their appearances. Faces changed, identities shifted, witness descriptions became unreliable, and the legend continued to grow. By 2013, the Pink Panthers had become international celebrities of the criminal world. Their exploits stretched across multiple continents, more than 20 countries, more than 100 jewelry stores. A documentary called Smash and Grab was released, chronicling the group's remarkable rise and helping transform them from criminals into cultural icons. But beneath the glamour was a simple reality. The Panthers weren't stealing televisions or cash registers. They hunted objects that could disappear into a pocket while carrying the value of a mansion. Their targets were the crown jewels of the luxury world. Massive diamonds, known throughout the gem trade. Rare colored stones worth millions. Historic jewels that had passed through royal collections and elite auction houses. And it wasn't just gemstones. Luxury watches became favorite targets as well. Rolexes, Patek Philippe, tiny machines carrying extraordinary value. The appeal wasn't merely their price. It was their portability. A multi-million-dollar diamond weighs only a few grams. A fortune can fit in the palm of your hand. And once a stone is removed from its setting, recut and quietly sold to underground channels, tracing its origins become nearly impossible. To the Pink Panthers, a diamond wasn't just a gemstone. It was concentrated wealth, small enough to hide, valuable enough to change a life, tempting enough to risk everything for. Over the years, investigators estimate the group stole roughly $500 million worth of jewelry. But surprisingly, they didn't keep most of it. Former members and investigators suggest the Panthers may have received only around 40% of the value from any given score. The real profits often flowed further down the chain, to brokers, middlemen, black market dealers, especially in Antwerp, one of the historic centers of the global diamond trade. For years, the Panthers seemed untouchable, but even legends leave footprints. By 2007, cracks had begun to appear. During a spectacular raid in Dubai, investigators recovered evidence from abandoned getaway vehicles. For the first time, authorities were able to positively identify multiple members of the organization. At the same time, the world was changing. Interpol was becoming more coordinated. Countries throughout Europe were strengthening extradition agreements. Borders that once offered protection were becoming harder to hide behind. And some of the Panthers' most famous members began finding themselves behind bars. Though prison didn't always stop them. Dragan Mikic famously escaped from prison in 2005, using a ladder, while accomplices outside reportedly opened fire with machine guns. In Switzerland, Milan Poparic became one of several Panthers to escape from Bois Mermet prison. Even in captivity, they seemed determined to live up to their reputation. The supply of jewelry never ran out, but safe places to disappear were becoming increasingly rare. Authorities found any information that they could on the Pink Panthers by establishing Interpol's Pink Panther Working Group. This was to centrally pool international forensic evidence, DNA, fingerprints, and phone records from heists across the world. The 2003 London heist, that helped dub the Pink Panthers style. But the true scope and interconnected nature of the gang were revealed through several key investigative milestones. Centralized database matching allowed police forces in countries like Japan, Dubai, Switzerland, and France that didn't routinely share suspect data to finally pull all their information together and talk to each other. They realized that DNA and fingerprint records internationally allowed them to isolate these heists and connect them to an affiliated network. Forensic breakthroughs allowed analyzing DNA that was left on shattered glass display cases and from past robberies to identify previously unknown Serbian and Montenegrin nationals. And through network analysis, investigators used analytical software to visualize vast amounts of international police data and map out an actual network structure to the criminal enterprise. They realized that many core members were veterans of the Balkan Wars, and they were utilizing their military disciplines to conduct these meticulous, week-long surveillances prior to the robberies even occurring. Today, with hundreds of thieves arrested associated with the Pink Panther gang, 4 of them have successfully escaped prison. So the Pink Panthers might not be as prominent as they once were. Or they might be. Maybe they're just doing it quieter. Maybe they're being sneakier. Maybe they're not getting caught. Today, the Pink Panthers no longer dominate headlines the way they once did. Whether that means the organization is fading away or simply becoming harder to see depends on who you ask. Because the thing about legends, the best ones never truly disappear. And perhaps that's why we're still fascinated by the Pink Panthers. This group of misfit criminals coming together for one goal, to steal the most luxurious items. And once some of the members are arrested, they come together again to break them out of prison. It makes a great story. And perhaps that's why we're fascinated. Not because they stole diamonds, not because they outsmarted police, not even because of the money, but because they turned theft into mythology. A handful of criminals transformed themselves into modern folklore. Ghosts moving through luxury boutiques, stealing fortunes measured in carats and vanishing before the dust had settled. The jewels they stole may have been recut, resold, scattered across the world, their identities erased forever. But the story of the Pink Panthers, that remains remarkably difficult to bury. And somewhere, in a vault, a museum, perhaps on the finger of an unsuspecting collector, there may still be a diamond carrying a secret history, a stone that once belonged to the most famous jewel thieves the world has ever known. And that concludes today's story. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you next week for another stone story. Next week's episode's sure to be a gem.